In my 30 years of practice treating over 50,000 patients, I've noticed something that keeps me up at night. The ones who came to me in a crisis, the ones rushed in with a heart attack or a stroke, almost never arrive without warning. The warning just wasn't being listened to or measured or even known to exist. Here's what I mean. Your body has been sending signals for years, maybe a decade, quiet, invisible signals. No chest pain, no dizziness, no dramatic symptoms, just numbers slowly drifting in the wrong direction. And those numbers are available to you right now with a basic blood draw and a device you can buy at the pharmacy for $30. Today, I'm going to show you the 6 numbers that tell the real story of what's happening inside you. I call them your body's dashboard. Every pilot checks the dashboard before takeoff. Every engineer monitors the gauges before running the engine at full load. Yet most men over 45 go years, sometimes entire decades, without ever glancing at theirs. But here's the thing, and I want you to stay with me until the end because of this. There's one specific mistake that makes all 6 of these numbers meaningless, even if you check them. I'll tell you exactly what it is in the second half of this video. Right now, let me show you what's actually possible. I have patients in their 60s who reversed early kidney damage, men with prediabetes who brought their numbers back to normal without a single prescription, not through luck or exceptional genetics, with knowledge, with the right 6 metrics checked at the right time, acted upon before the damage became irreversible. So let's get into it. Number 1 on your dashboard. Blood pressure. It's called the silent killer for a reason. Not a dramatic reason, a quiet, devastating one. There are no nerves in your artery walls that sense pressure. That's not a flaw in the design, it's just a biological fact. So when your blood pressure reads 150/90, you feel nothing. Completely normal morning. You have your coffee, you drive to work, you feel fine. And meanwhile, every single heartbeat is hammering your artery walls, your kidneys, the delicate vessels in your brain with force they were never designed to sustain long term. Think of it this way. Take a garden hose, run full pressure through it every single day for 10 years. The rubber degrades, it stiffens, it cracks at the fittings, it develops weak spots. Your arteries work exactly the same way. They're elastic by design. They're meant to expand and contract, but chronic high pressure accelerates the stiffening of those walls in ways that can't be undone once they've progressed far enough. High blood pressure doesn't cause a heart attack directly. It causes the conditions that make a heart attack inevitable. It weakens the heart muscle by forcing it to pump against constant resistance. It damages the kidneys' filtering vessels. It strains the brain's blood supply. And that's a crucial difference to understand because none of those processes have symptoms until they're already advanced. I had a patient named Marcus, 58 years old, construction manager, solid guy who never missed a day of work in his life. He came in for a routine insurance physical. Blood pressure was 162/98. He had no idea, said he felt fantastic, actually laughed a little when I showed him the reading. We ran further tests and found early thickening of the left ventricle wall from years of pumping against that elevated resistance. Not damage from last month, years of accumulated structural change that had never announced itself once. That's what you can't feel building up. So, here's what you do. Buy a home blood pressure monitor. They cost between $20 and $40. You don't need a doctor's office for this. Check it in the morning, before coffee, before any activity. Sit quietly for 5 minutes first. Take 2 readings, 1 minute apart. Record both. Don't judge any single reading in isolation because blood pressure fluctuates throughout the day. What you're looking for is a pattern over days and weeks. Your target is systolic around 120, diastolic around 80. If you're consistently seeing readings above 135/85, that's your signal to talk to your doctor. Not next year, soon. Blood pressure is the single most controllable risk factor for stroke and heart attack. And it's also the most ignored simply because you can't feel it going wrong. That changes today. Number 2, resting heart rate. This one surprises people every time I bring it up because it's not a number most men have ever been asked to track. Your resting heart rate, the number of times your heart beats per minute when you're doing Absolutely nothing is one of the most powerful long-term predictors of cardiovascular health and longevity. Studies following large populations over decades consistently show that a lower resting heart rate correlates with longer life, not because it causes health, because it reflects it. A healthy resting heart rate sits between 50 and 70 beats per minute. Trained endurance athletes sometimes go lower into the 40s. But if your resting heart rate is consistently above 80, 90 or higher, your heart is working overtime every single hour of every single day without a break, without recovery. Here's the math, and I want you to actually sit with this. At 90 beats per minute versus 60, your heart performs an additional 43,000 beats every single day. That's over 15 million extra beats per year. The muscle works harder, the electrical conduction system is under more strain, and the inflammatory burden on your entire cardiovascular system increases in ways we can now measure precisely. A chronically elevated resting heart rate can signal metabolic dysfunction, thyroid problems, chronic and resolved stress, dehydration, or early cardiovascular disease. And once again, you feel nothing that you'd identify as a warning sign. You might feel a little tired. You might feel like you're not sleeping as well as you used to, but you'd probably blame that on age. Check your resting heart rate first thing in the morning. Before you get out of bed, most smartwatches will track this automatically while you sleep. If you don't have a smartwatch, press 2 fingers lightly on the inside of your wrist, just below the base of your thumb. Feel for the pulse. Count beats for 30 seconds. Double it. That's your number. Do this 5 days in a row and take the average. If it's above 80 consistently, write it down and mention it at your next appointment. If it's above 90 on most mornings, don't wait for the next appointment. And here's the good news, because I always want to give you the good news alongside the warning. Resting heart rate responds dramatically to lifestyle changes. Regular brisk walking, even 30 minutes a day, better sleep, reducing caffeine afternoon, managing stress more actively. Most of my patients lowered their resting heart rate by 10 to 15 beats within 6 weeks, not months. 6 weeks of consistent, moderate change. That's the part of medicine I find genuinely energizing. Because it means your choices show up directly in your data. You can measure the improvement. That feedback loop is powerful in a way that abstract health advice never is. Quick question for you, and I'm genuinely curious. Do you know your resting heart rate right now? Not a guess, the actual number from this morning. Write it in the comments. I read them, and it tells me a great deal about where the people watching this channel actually stand with their own health monitoring. Number 3, and this is the one most men have genuinely never heard of, EGFR, estimated glomerular filtration rate. This number tells you how well your kidneys are filtering your blood, and it may be the most critically underappreciated metric on this entire list. Here's why. Your kidneys can lose 40, 50, even 60% of their function before you feel anything at all. By the time you notice swelling in your ankles and legs, fatigue that doesn't resolve with rest, or changes in your urine, significant and often irreversible damage has already been done. This is not an exaggeration. This is basic nephrology. I've had patients come to me with an EGFR of 30, meaning they'd lost more than 2/3 of their kidney function, who came in for something unrelated and had no kidney symptoms whatsoever. They thought they were perfectly fine. They felt fine. The kidneys have been quietly compensating for years. Here's the mechanism worth understanding. Your kidneys contain approximately 1 million tiny filtering units called nephrons. When some are damaged, whether by chronic high blood pressure, elevated blood sugar, or certain medications taken over many years, the remaining nephrons simply work harder. They compensate for what's been lost. It's a brilliant survival adaptation, but it also means you can lose enormous capacity before the system flags any distress. The organ is running on reserve capacity silently for years or even decades. High blood pressure damages kidneys. Uncontrolled blood sugar damages kidneys. Common over-the-counter anti-inflammatory medications, ibuprofen and naproxen, particular, can strain kidney function when taken regularly over time. And because the kidneys compensate so effectively for so long, none of this announces itself. Ask for a basic metabolic panel or kidney function panel at your next blood draw. This is completely standard. It's covered by most insurance plans. It gives you creatinine levels, which your doctor uses to calculate your EGFR, along with other kidney markers. Your target is an EGFR above 60. Above 90 is optimal. If your number falls between 45 and 60, that's a yellow flag that warrants monitoring and investigation. Below 45, you should be working with a kidney specialist, and the opportunity here is real. Kidney damage caught early from blood pressure or blood sugar is often reversible or at minimum stoppable. The trajectory can genuinely be changed. Caught late, you're managing a progressive condition for the rest of your life, and the downstream effects on cardiovascular health, energy, hormones, and overall function are significant. One blood test, one number, but it could be the most important number you've never been told to check. Number 4, triglycerides and LDL cholesterol. Most people have heard of cholesterol, but here's what they consistently don't understand. Total cholesterol is not the number that matters most. What matters is the combination of LDL, often called bad cholesterol, and triglycerides, and specifically how they interact. LDL particles, when they're elevated and particularly when they're small and dense, embed themselves in artery walls. They trigger a local inflammatory response. Your immune system dispatches cells to address the problem. Those cells get trapped, foam cells form, plaque builds up over years, then decades, all in complete silence. This process is happening right now in men who feel entirely healthy. No pain, no warning sensation, no indication at all, until the plaque becomes unstable and ruptures. That rupture is what causes most heart attacks. Not a gradual narrowing that slowly reduces blood flow, but a sudden crack in an unstable plaque followed by a clot forming almost instantly. The difference between a man who has a heart attack and a man who doesn't is often a matter of plaque stability, which is directly influenced by the lipid environment those plaques are sitting in. High LDL combined with high triglycerides creates exactly the conditions that make plaques unstable and dangerous. Triglycerides above 150 milligrams per deciliter are worth addressing. LDL above 100 is a conversation worth having with your doctor. These numbers don't exist in isolation, and your physician will look at your complete risk picture, including blood pressure, family history, and other factors. This is a standard lipid panel. Fast for 9 to 12 hours before the blood draw for the most accurate results. Here's something that surprises almost every patient I share this with. If your triglycerides are elevated, the first intervention isn't necessarily a statin. It's sugar. Refined carbohydrates, sweetened beverages, and alcohol are the primary drivers of elevated triglycerides in most people. The liver converts excess sugar into fat. That fat circulates as triglycerides. I've seen triglycerides drop from 280 down to 110 in 3 months. No medication, just the removal of sweetened drinks, white bread, and late-night snacking. I've seen it enough times that I no longer find it remarkable. But patients see it, and they're genuinely amazed because they can measure it. The number changed. Their choices changed a biomarker. That's real. LDL is more nuanced and more persistent. If yours is elevated alongside other risk factors, your doctor may recommend medication. That's a conversation worth having promptly, not postponing because you feel well. The most dangerous thing about elevated cholesterol is that it feels identical to normal cholesterol. No symptoms distinguish them. Ask for the test. Number 5. HbA1c, hemoglobin A1c. This is the test that most people are still not getting, and it may be the most revealing one on the entire list. A single fasting glucose test tells you what your blood sugar is doing on one specific morning. If you ate well the night before and slept a full 8 hours, that number looks fine. HbA1c tells you the story of your blood sugar across the past 2 to 3 months. It measures a form of hemoglobin that gets permanently modified when glucose is chronically elevated. The more sugar in your blood over time, the higher the percentage of modified hemoglobin. You cannot cheat this test with one good morning. That's why it matters enormously. Because chronically elevated blood sugar, even moderately elevated blood sugar that doesn't yet qualify as diabetes, damages virtually every system in your body simultaneously. It damages blood vessel walls through a process called glycation, essentially a slow chemical browning of protein structures. It damages nerves, beginning with the smallest nerve fibers in your feet and hands. It damages your kidneys' filtering structures. It damages the tiny vessels in your retinas. It damages your heart's electrical and vascular systems. Prediabetes, which is an HbA1c between 5.7 and 6.4%, affects roughly 1 in 3 adults over the age of 45 in the United States. The majority of those individuals have never been told this. Many have never had the test. I've seen this pattern in my practice hundreds of times over the years. Reasonably fit men, not dramatically overweight, with active jobs, who come in and have an HbA1c of 6.1, no symptoms they'd associate with blood sugar, and potentially 10 years of cumulative vascular and nerve damage already underway, quietly, invisibly. Here's what stays with me about this. The nerve damage associated with chronically elevated blood sugar, the kind that eventually causes numbness in the feet, balance problems, or reduced sensation in the extremities. That process begins at blood sugar levels well below the diagnostic threshold for diabetes. You can be technically not diabetic by standard definitions and still be accumulating vascular and nerve damage. That's precisely why the prediabetes window matters so much, and why catching it early is not just useful but genuinely transformative. Request an HbA1c at your next annual physical. If your doctor doesn't automatically include it, ask specifically for it. One blood draw, inexpensive, one of the most informative tests available. Your target is below 5.7%. Between 5.7 and 6.4 is prediabetes territory. And this is where I've seen the most dramatic reversals. Reducing processed carbohydrates, increasing physical activity, particularly a 10-minute walk after meals, which has a measurable effect on post-meal blood sugar, improving sleep quality. These interventions can genuinely move this number back into the healthy range. I've watched it happen. Above 6.5% is the diagnostic threshold for type 2 diabetes, and you need a treatment plan with your physician, starting immediately rather than after further deliberation. The reason I find HbA1c so clinically valuable, beyond just the number itself, is what it reveals about time. Because it measures months of biology rather than a single moment, it reflects your actual daily habits, your real-life patterns, not one careful morning before a blood draw. It's honest in a way that many tests aren't. Number 6, the last on your dashboard, and the one that even many physicians underemphasize in routine care, ALT and AST, your liver enzymes. These enzymes live inside liver cells. When liver cells are damaged or inflamed, they leak into the bloodstream. That's how we detect early liver injury, by measuring how much is leaking and at what rate. Commonly catching with this test in middle-aged men, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It affects roughly 1 in 4 adults globally. It's strongly associated with elevated triglycerides, elevated blood sugar, and elevated blood pressure. And in the vast majority of people, at the stages when it's still fully reversible, it produces no symptoms whatsoever. Here's why this deserves serious attention. The liver is the metabolic headquarters of your entire body. It regulates blood sugar between meals. It processes and metabolizes hormones, including testosterone. It filters everything you eat, drink, breathe, and absorb through your skin. When the liver is chronically inflamed or accumulating fat, none of these processes function at full efficiency. Your hormonal balance is disrupted. Your metabolic rate drops. Inflammatory signals spread systemically through the bloodstream. Think about what this means in practice. Many men who come to me describing persistent fatigue that doesn't resolve with rest, brain fog that they've normalized as part of aging, or unexplained weight gain despite reasonable diet and activity, have elevated liver enzymes they've never had tested. The liver was struggling, everything downstream was affected, and no one had ever connected those dots. If fatty liver disease progresses unchecked over 10 to 20 years, it can develop into more serious liver conditions. No symptoms until very late stages when the damage is already extensive. A liver function panel is included in most comprehensive metabolic panels. Ask your doctor to specifically include ALT and AST in your annual blood work. Normal values are generally below 40 units per liter. If either value is elevated, your physician will want to look further, and the intervention that most reliably moves these numbers toward normal, reducing added sugar. I know I mentioned sugar in the triglyceride section. That parallel is not a coincidence. Fructose and refined carbohydrates drive both elevated triglycerides and hepatic fat accumulation. Through the same metabolic pathway, they are frequently the same root problem appearing in two different measurements. Address the root and multiple numbers often improve simultaneously. The liver doesn't hurt in the early stages. It doesn't cramp. It doesn't cause acute distress. It doesn't send you to the emergency room when fat is just beginning to accumulate in its cells. It just quietly processes less efficiently than it should, but it also recovers remarkably well when the metabolic load is reduced. Fatty liver disease caught early is one of the most reversible conditions in all of medicine. That is genuinely good news, and I want you to hold on to it. Now I need to stop and be completely direct with you about something important, because everything I've just described, all 6 metrics, all the targets, all the practical steps will not help a large portion of the people watching this. And I told you at the start of this video that I'd explain exactly why. Here's the mistake. People hear information like this. They feel genuinely motivated, maybe even a little alarmed, and then they do nothing, or they check one number, see it's in range, and assume everything is fine, or they intend to schedule the blood work and it drifts to next month, then next year, then the year after that. The 6-number dashboard only works if you actually look at it. I want to say that again because it sounds obvious and it isn't. Knowing that these tests exist does not protect you. Intending to get them done does not protect you. The test itself, the actual number on the actual page, the actual conversation with your actual doctor, that's what changes outcomes. In 30 years of practice, I've seen patients who read every health article published, who could recite biomarkers and supplements and protocols from memory, who still die from a preventable condition because they never translated knowledge into action. Information without action is just entertainment. Here's what I tell every new patient who sits down across from me. I don't care how healthy you feel. Feeling healthy is not a measurement. Feeling healthy is a story you're telling yourself based on the absence of obvious symptoms. The only way to actually know what's happening in your body is to check the numbers. So here is exactly what I want you to do before this week is over. Not next month, this week. First, schedule a blood draw, a comprehensive metabolic panel, a lipid panel, and an HbA1c1 appointment, one blood draw. It covers 5 of the 6 metrics on this dashboard simultaneously. Second, get a home blood pressure monitor and use it for 7 consecutive mornings under the same conditions. Before coffee, after 5 minutes of sitting quietly. Average the readings. Write the number down somewhere you'll actually see it. Third, if you have a smartwatch or fitness tracker, check your average resting heart rate over the last 7 days. It's almost certainly already recorded. You just haven't looked. That's the protocol. 3 actions, 1 week. Everything else follows from those, and I'll add a 4th because the patients who actually follow through with this tend to have one thing the others don't. They tell someone. They tell their wife, their brother, their friend at work, their doctor. They say out loud, "I'm doing this." The social commitment changes the follow-through rate considerably. It's not about accountability in some punishing sense. It's about making a private intention into something real enough to actually happen. I want to close with something I share with patients who push back on all of this, who say, "I feel completely fine. Is all of this really necessary?" I ask them one question. When your car's check engine light comes on, do you wait until the engine seizes before going to a mechanic? Of course not. That would be irrational, but your body doesn't even have a check engine light for most of these conditions. The damage accumulates in complete silence across years. The dashboard I've given you today is that light. 6 simple numbers that modern medicine can measure with a basic blood draw and a $30 device from the pharmacy. The gap between where you are right now and where a serious health crisis begins is often years, sometimes a decade or more. That gap is your window of opportunity. And inside that window, the interventions are often straightforward. Walk in 30 minutes a day, reducing added sugar, getting consistent sleep, small changes that compound over time into dramatically different health trajectories. Don't wait for the crisis to act. The crisis is where modern medicine saves lives with tremendous skill. But the gap before the crisis, that's where you get to save your own. Know your numbers. Check them every year. Track the direction they're moving, not just whether they're in range today. And if you notice any of them drifting in the wrong direction, treat that as the signal it is and act on it while acting is still simple. I've worked with over 50,000 patients across 3 decades. The ones who do well long-term are not necessarily the ones with the best genetics. They're the ones who paid attention early. They're the ones who came in with their numbers written on a piece of paper, who asked the right questions, who made small adjustments when adjustments were still easy to make. That's not luck. That's a decision. Made before it became urgent. You now have the 6 numbers to pay attention to. Use them. If this was useful, share it with someone you care about. A brother, a colleague, a father, someone who probably hasn't looked at any of these numbers either. That share might matter more than you realize. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next one.